I'm standing on my back porch in Bacolod City, watching the afternoon heat shimmer off the street below, and I'm thinking about how I'd tell someone the truth about this place. Not the Instagram version, not the retirement guru version, the actual truth. My name is Diane Mercer. I'm 62 years old, and 3 years ago I left Phoenix, Arizona, where I'd spent 30 years in commercial real estate, and moved to the Philippines. This island, this city, this version of my life that I still, honestly, don't quite know how to explain to people back home. The reason I'm thinking about this right now is because I just got an email from an old colleague asking if I'd help her sister, who's been fantasizing about retiring to the Philippines for about 2 years. And she wants to know if it's as good as it sounds. The sister has been watching YouTube videos, the retirement blogs, the folks with sun-damaged skin who talk about living on $1, $200 a month, and how the Philippines is the last free place on Earth. And my colleague wanted me to give her sister the real story. Not the sales pitch, not the doom and gloom either, just what it's actually like. So here's where I'm going to start. With the moment I almost left, I was sitting in a Jollibee in Araneta, Saturday afternoon, eating chicken that tasted like chicken, but also like something else I couldn't name. This particular Filipino fast food sweetness I'd been learning to tolerate for about 9 months at that point, and I kept thinking, what the hell am I doing here? I had money, not rich, but enough to live comfortably. Why had I given up my apartment in a gated community in Phoenix, my predictable life, my social circle, for this, sitting in a Jollibee on a Saturday, sweating through my shirt, eating oversweet chicken? Completely surrounded by people who didn't know me and probably didn't care, and I couldn't even order a simple black coffee without feeling like I was asking for something bizarre. That moment in the Jollibee was real. It's not the moment people talk about in those YouTube videos, not romantic or adventurous. It's lonely. And if I'm going to be honest, which is what you're getting, you need to know that this feeling didn't disappear. It transforms, sure. It gets easier, but that fundamental displacement, that strangeness, it doesn't just vanish because you've been somewhere for a year or 2 or 3. Here's what happened before the Jollibee. I was in Phoenix, successful by any reasonable definition. I'd built a real estate portfolio, had a nice condo with a view of Camelback Mountain. Dated occasionally, had friends I'd known for 20 years, but I was bored. Not unhappy, not depressed, just fundamentally, chronically bored. There's a specific kind of ennui that hits you in your late 50s when you realize you're going to keep doing the same thing until you're too old to do it, and then you're going to die. That thought doesn't panic everyone, but it panicked me. Panicked me so much I started making worse and worse decisions. I took a trip to the Philippines when I was 59, just a 2-week thing, flew into Manila, spent 3 days there, and hated it. Loud, chaotic, genuinely terrible air quality. Scams around every corner. I was ready to leave, but I'd booked a side trip to Dumaguete, this smaller city down in the Visayas, and something about it clicked. Quieter. The people were friendlier. There was a pace to life that felt negotiable, like I could actually opt out of rushing. That trip led to another trip 6 months later. That trip led to renting a small house in a neighborhood called Barangay Tabuk Tubig for 1,200 pesos a month. About $22 just to see what it felt like to actually live somewhere instead of visiting. That month convinced me maybe, possibly, I could do this thing. I could actually sell my condo, liquidate the portfolio, and try living in the Philippines long term. So I did. Let me tell you what the YouTube videos get wrong. Or not wrong exactly, but severely incomplete. The first thing is cost of living. You've definitely heard the number. You can live in the Philippines for $1,000 a month. Maybe $1,200 if you want to be comfortable. True, technically. But here's what they don't say. That $1,000 buys you a very specific life, a modest house or a rental in a barangay where you're probably the only American or foreigner, local food, genuinely delicious and genuinely affordable. I eat breakfast at the corner Carinderia for maybe $3, a full meal of adobo and rice and some greens for $4 or $5, transportation and tricycles and jeepneys, those colorful minibuses that cost about 25 cents per trip. But here's what it doesn't buy you: convenience. It doesn't buy you the ability to run errands in a day the way you could in the States. When you need to file paperwork, you don't go to an office and have it done. You go and they tell you to come back tomorrow. You come back tomorrow and they tell you they need a different document. You get the document, come back the next day, and now they can process it. But it'll take a week. Not hyperbole. That's literally how government and bureaucracy work here. And it doesn't buy you privacy or anonymity. So you move into a barangay and people know they want to know. Not in a mean way. Filipinos are genuinely warm and welcoming. But you're a foreigner in a place where most people have never interacted with one. They notice, they talk about you. If you're out walking at night, people ask why. If you're not home on a Sunday, someone will have checked on your house. Your landlord will tell your neighbors about your rental situation. Your neighbors will know roughly how much money you have, because they know the exchange rate and where foreigners come from. Not surveillance exactly, just how community works in a place where everybody knows everybody. The second thing the videos get wrong is healthcare. This is crucial, and I'm going to spend some time on it because it's genuinely important and genuinely misleading in most of the content I've seen. People say the Philippines has excellent healthcare and it's cheap. Partially true. Private healthcare is genuinely cheap compared to America, and I had a full physical at a private clinic, blood work, EKG, for about $150. That same exam at a hospital in Phoenix would run you $2,000, maybe more. So, yeah, cheaper, but bigger. But the quality and consistency aren't the same as what you get in the United States. The hospitals in Manila and Cebu City are fine, modern, good equipment, well-trained doctors. But the hospitals outside the major cities are different. I got a urinary tract infection about 6 months after I arrived. Nothing serious, just one of those stupid human things, and I went to the local hospital. The doctor was nice, but the building looked like it hadn't been fully cleaned in a while. The equipment looked dated, and when she prescribed antibiotics, they were generic versions. I had to source from 3 different pharmacies because no single pharmacy had the full supply. And here's the thing about being sick in a place where you don't have family or a close social network. It's isolating. And when I got that infection, I was alone, went to the hospital alone, filled prescriptions alone, sat in my house for 3 days feeling miserable, alone. In Phoenix, I'd have called a friend. Someone would have brought me soup, checked on me. Here, I had nice neighbors who didn't quite understand what was wrong with me, and a landlord who seemed more concerned about whether I could still pay rent than whether I was okay. PhilHealth, the government health insurance, is cheap but limited, covers very basic stuff. If you want better coverage, you need a private HMO, and those run about $70 to $100 a month. Most of the expats I know have done that calculation and decided it's worth it. I did. Still cheaper than U.S. insurance, but you're paying for it. The other thing is that medical tourism is real but overstated. Yes, you can get dental work done cheaply. Yes, some procedures cost a fraction of the States, but you're also the medical equivalent of a tourist. Doctors aren't invested in your long-term health the same way. You're not part of a healthcare system that knows you over time. Every visit is kind of starting from zero. The third thing, and this is maybe the biggest one, is the reality of being a permanent outsider in a country where you're obviously foreign. I'm tall for a woman, 5'9" blonde hair, going gray. And I have a particular kind of American look about me, not particularly striking, just obviously not from here. When I walk through the market, children point. When I go to a restaurant that's not touristy, people seem confused by my presence until I prove I can actually eat like a normal person. There's a curiosity that never quite goes away, and you can either accept it as part of the fabric of daily life or let it drive you crazy. What I wasn't prepared for was how much I'd want a conversation with someone who just understood where I was coming from without me having to explain it. There are expat communities here, and they're helpful. They know the visa situation, they know which hospitals are okay, which neighborhoods are dodgy, but a lot of the expat community is also pretty weird and insular, sometimes resentful of the Philippines in ways that made me uncomfortable. They'd complain about the heat, the pace, the lack of efficiency, and I'd think, then why are you still here? But I also understood the impulse. The Philippines is genuinely challenging in ways YouTube doesn't really capture. If today's video has you wondering whether it's really possible to build a better life in the Philippines, you're not the only one asking. Every year, more Americans, men and women, both, are discovering that starting over doesn't mean starting from nothing. Inside a book called Still Somebody, you'll read the true stories of 7 Americans who left behind rising costs, financial stress, and the sense that life had already passed them by. You'll also find the real numbers behind their new lives. Apartments starting around $280 a month, $12 doctor visits, people living comfortably on about $1.150 a month. No hype, no sales pitch, just honest experiences and real budgets that could save you months of research and some costly mistakes. If you've ever wondered whether a simpler, more affordable life overseas is possible, the link below gets you the instant PDF for just $27. Your next chapter could begin tonight. Here's a specific example. Electricity. The Philippines has regular brownouts, sometimes planned, sometimes not. When I first moved here, I didn't have a backup generator, and the first time the power went out for 6 hours in the middle of the afternoon heat, I sat in my house in the dark, sweating through my clothes, and thought about my air-conditioned apartment in Phoenix with a kind of longing that felt almost physical. I now have a backup system, a small inverter with batteries, which helps, but it's not the same as reliable, constant power. Also, internet. Huge surprise to me. I thought, okay, the Philippines is still developing. Internet might be slower, but it'll be there. Internet is actually kind of a crapshoot. I have one of the 2 main providers, and on a good day I get decent speeds. On a bad day, no internet. Or internet so slow, checking email takes 5 minutes. I've had neighbors who switch to a different wireless provider and swear by it, but it's not available everywhere, and service quality varies wildly by barangay. Real problem if you need to work online or stay connected, and especially a problem because you can't just call customer service and get a technician out the next day. Like in America, you call, they say someone will come, nobody comes. You call again, it takes forever. The heat is also not optional. People always say, oh, you'll get used to it. I've been here 3 years, still don't love it. Not like desert heat where it's dry and manageable. It's tropical heat, humid, oppressive, the kind that makes you slow down whether you want to or not. Gets to about 95 in Bacolod most afternoons, but the humidity makes it feel like 110. You can't be outside for long without sweating through whatever you're wearing. Can't exercise outside in the afternoon. Can't do much of anything outside except sit in the shade and drink something cold. But here's where I need to be balanced, because the Philippines isn't some hellscape. Not somewhere you should avoid, just somewhere you should go into with accurate information. The food is genuinely good and cheap, and there's a rhythm to eating here, different from America. Breakfast is early, like 6 in the morning, typically rice and some kind of meat or fish. Lunch is the big meal, eaten at midday, and dinner is lighter. I eat better here, honestly, than I did in Phoenix, because the food is fresh and local and cheaper to eat. Well, a meal at a local restaurant costs $2 or $3.